Hello, welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Raja Sarosh Sahib and these are the headlines. The Taliban commanders claim to have seized the Panjshir Valley, which is the final holdout against groups' control, but the resistance fighters refuted the claim, saying they are still battling. Meanwhile, China says the countries responsible for the current situation in Afghanistan should be held accountable. Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa has reiterated the country's commitment to an all-inclusive Afghan government. He made these remarks during a meeting with the British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. According to the military's media wing, Raab appreciated Pakistan's role in Afghan situation and regional stability. Israeli forces have injured at least 70 Palestinians in a clampdown on an anti-settlement protest in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian media said Israeli troops fired live guns, rubber bullets, stun grenades and tear gas at the protesters in Beta village. Palestinians have been holding daily protests against the construction of an illegal settlement outpost on Mount Sabeh for nearly 4 months. The US has sanctioned 4 Iranian intelligence operators for being allegedly behind a failed plot to kidnap an American journalist. The Treasury Department alleged that the individuals were working as a part of a wide-ranging campaign to silence critics of the Iranian government. Meanwhile, Iran has dismissed the new curve, saying the move reflects Washington's addiction to sanctions. Brazil has reported more than 700 new COVID-19 deaths and more than 25,000 cases overnight. Mexico also logged over 700 deaths and more than 17,000 cases since yesterday. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 79 people lost their lives to the virus and nearly 4,000 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Globally, the COVID-19 death toll has reached over 4.55 million, while the caseload is more than 219 million. That's all with the headlines. We'll be right back with the details after a short break. Welcome back. The Taliban commanders claim to have seized the Panjshir Valley, which is the final holdout against groups' control. But the resistance fighter refuted the claim, saying they are still battling.
Hundreds of Afghan families flee heavy fighting between Taliban fighters and resistance forces for the control of the final holdout province. Earlier, the Taliban leaders said they attacked the valley after attempts for a negotiated settlement failed. In Qatar, the Taliban representatives met Pakistan's ambassador and deliberated upon bilateral relations. In a tweet, Suhail Shaheen said issues related to facilitating people's movement at Torham and Spin Boldak borders were also discussed. At Torham and Spin Boldak border crossings were also discussed. Meanwhile, China said the countries responsible for current Afghan situation should be held accountable. At a news conference, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said long-lasting peace will be prerequisite to attract investment in the country. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to Qatar and Germany on Sunday to discuss Afghan evacuees. In Germany, Blinken will participate in the ministerial meeting including 20 countries that have a stake in relocating the Afghans. Blinken also said the US government was maintaining contact with the Taliban on issues that are important. Besides, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will convene Afghan Aid Conference in Geneva on 13th of September.
Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa has reiterated the country's commitment to an all-inclusive Afghan government. He made these remarks during a meeting with the British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. The military's media wing says Raab appreciated Pakistan's role in Afghanistan situation and regional stability. The ISPR said Pakistan's effective measures in fighting COVID-19 also came under discussion. Earlier, Raab said Britain must deal with new realities in Afghanistan as it seeks to secure a safe passage for evacuations. Raab added that a team of 15 people has been deployed to help with the logistics in Pakistan. He said Islamabad is a key partner to the UK, both for safe evacuations and wider strategy in the region. Israeli forces have injured at least 70 Palestinians in a clampdown on an anti-settlement protest in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian media said the troops opened live and rubber bullets, stun grenades and tear gas at the protesters in the Beta village. Palestinians have been holding daily protests against the construction of an illegal settlement outpost on Mount Sabeh for nearly 4 months. In Kufur Badum as well, Palestinians were assaulted by the occupation forces during the weekly anti-settlement procession. Palestinian media said a young man was shot with a rubber-coated steel bullet in the head, while several others were injured. Protesters say they will not be intimidated by the Israeli violence and will continue to resist against the occupation. Now we have with us Akram Nache, a social activist from the occupied West Bank. Nache, thank you for joining us. My first question to you is, Israeli forces have again injured at least 70 Palestinians in a clampdown on an anti-settlement protest in the occupied West Bank, while it continues to attack Gaza Strip, violating May's ceasefire. But the international community is silent on this and Israeli aggression. What is your take?
Okay, when we're talking about the clashes and the Israeli violation against the peaceful protesters, Palestinian non-violent protesters every day in West Bank, they are aiming to make them silence. They don't want any kind of a protest, even in West Bank, in Gaza, in any part of Palestine, to appear on TVs, on in media and international media, because this kind of a protest says there's a continuous occupation, there's a continuous human rights violation, there is a continuous demolishing house. So Israeli occupation don't want any kind of a protest against the occupation, and they don't want. They just only want the story and the image of that Israeli open the checkpoints. They are give the permission for Palestinians to work, and they just want these kind of images and stories to appear on international media, not the real story, not the real what happened in the ground. So every day there's a non-violent protest, even in Gaza, in West Bank, and Israeli occupation, Israeli forces storming in them and violating them.
All right, Mr. Akram, the next question that I want to ask is that forced convictions of Palestinians, home and demolitions are being carried out by the Israeli authorities. What strategy does the Palestinian authorities could adopt to avoid these evictions and demolitions?
Okay, Israeli demolition houses in West Bank and Jerusalem and Palestine, occupied Palestine 48 is continuous also process. So Israel want to evacuate these places from Palestinians. They demolish this house. They justify usually demolishing houses by that it's unpermission house. Also, although it was built before the occupation, it was before it was built before declaring Israeli occupation also, or Israeli state. So Israel want to evacuate all Palestinians from Area C in West Bank, from inside occupied Jerusalem, from also the Palestinian cities and villages in occupied Palestine 1948. But usually Palestinians try to protest, try to say, no, we will stay in our houses, we will stay in our land, because if we leave our houses, where we can go? If we go from our houses and evacuated it for settlers, that means we are practicing a new Nakba, a new refugee story. So Palestinians try to stay and to start witness in their houses, not to leave them, and uses all possible thing that they can use, that they can do in their start witness and their houses, and even it's legal, international, or local strategy to keep their houses against the occupation.
All right. Now, how do the Palestinians survive with this strict blockade of the Gaza Strip?
Okay, Palestinians try usually to use all of method, all of strategy against occupation, even it's local, international, or anything to keep they are living in their houses. By the way, there is many Palestinians, they can't live even a house. They live in the tents or live in a caves in the Al-Masafir, let's say, or in the Jordan Valley, or in many places. They stay, although there is no possible for their life, but they think that if they leave their land, the settler will take it. So they try to stay anyway under all the pressure to keep the land, although all pressure, although all practices, all Palestinians, they don't leave their houses.
Right. So Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed has called upon the U.S. to reopen its Consulate General in occupied East Jerusalem, while Tel Aviv has said it would be a bad idea. Do you think Washington will stick to its decision of reopening the consulate?
Okay, about the consul in U.S. consul in occupied Jerusalem, there's rumors, or there's since Biden won the election, they are talking about to reopen the U.S. consulate in occupied Jerusalem, usually, and all for sure. Israeli refused that. If Israeli they just want one embassy in Jerusalem, and that will mean that Trump's steps, which was taken during the Trump period, it was that U.S. step back for that. So Israeli pressure now to not reopen, to banning reopen the consulate in Jerusalem. And they just want the one embassy in Jerusalem for Israeli and Palestinian, which is mean there is no recognition for Palestinian states in West Bank and Jerusalem. So we think that if Palestinian give more pressure, if Palestinian practice more pressure, it will be U.S. will may reopen the consulate of although the Israeli rejection.
All right, Mr. Akram, thank you for joining Indus News. It's time for a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The U.S. has sanctioned 4 Iranian intelligence operatives for being allegedly behind a failed plot to kidnap an American journalist. The Treasury Department said targeting dissidents and journalists undermines international peace and security. It alleged that the individuals were working as a part of a wide-range campaign to silence critics of the Iranian government. A Treasury official said targeting officials abroad shows that Iran's repression extends far beyond its borders. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. is aware of ongoing Iranian interests in targeting other American citizens. The sanctions block all property of the listed individuals in the U.S. Meanwhile, Iran has dismissed the new curbs, saying the move reflects Washington's addiction to sanctions. In a tweet, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Sayyid Khatibzadeh said the U.S. must respect Iran. U.S. President Joe Biden has ordered the declassification of secret documents from the government's probe in the 9/11 attacks. His instructions came in response to pressure from survivors and families of the victims of the attack. The president, through an executive order, directed the relevant agencies to publicly declassify the documents over the next 5 months. Earlier, about 1,700 people directly affected by the September 11 attacks wrote a sternly worded letter to Biden. They called on him to skip next week's memorial events unless he released the secret documents. The move comes ahead of the 20th anniversary of the attack, which spurred then President George Bush to invade Afghanistan. Brazil has reported more than 700 COVID-19 deaths and more than 25,000 cases overnight. In Mexico, 725 lost their lives and over 17,000 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Globally, the COVID-19 death toll has exceeded 4.55 million, while the caseload is over 219 million. More in this report.
The prospects of the world's reopening have further diminished as countries adopt stringent measures after recent surges in the COVID-19 cases. New Zealand reported the first death from the Delta variant and 20 further daily infections, all in its epicenter, Auckland. Australia's most populous state of New South Wales also reported record daily locally acquired infections. Meanwhile, Britain has announced to ship vaccines to the delegates who will be attending global climate talks next month. However, in London, anti-vaccine protesters clashed with the police as they tried to storm the office of the Britain's drug regulator's office. UK's vaccine advisors say they are not recommending the vaccination of 12 to 15 years old. They say they prefer a precautionary approach in healthy children due to uncertainty over the longer-term impact of the rare side effects.
But there are uncertainties about the long-term implications of that condition. And that makes the risk-benefit balance for these children really quite tight and much tighter than we would be comfortable to make the recommendation. So that's why we're going the way we are for now. And obviously, time will tell whether these problems are going to be significant or not.
In South America, amid concerns about looming education crisis, Cuba has launched a national campaign to vaccinate children aged 2 to 12, a condition for resuming in-person studies. Peru has also launched a mass immunization rollout for teachers in the urban areas, as it aims to get schools reopened in the coming months.
We want to be with our students, but we have to make the parents and our children understand that the vaccines come first. Today, we started vaccinating teachers in the urban area. More than 60% of the teachers working in rural areas are already vaccinated. Vaccinations are guaranteed, and we hope that in a short time, teachers will be vaccinated. We are making every effort to achieve this.
Meanwhile, U.S. pediatric COVID-19 hospitalizations have also surged due to the Delta variant. But a study suggests that fears of variants causing more severe disease are unfounded. Earlier, U.S. top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci said it is likely that 3 doses of the vaccine are needed for full protection. Moderna also said it has asked the EU's drug regulator authority for conditional approval of its booster shot.
In Pakistan, 79 more people lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the fatalities toll has jumped to 26,114. It said nearly 4,000 people contracted the virus overnight. The positivity rate of infections stood at 6.21%. The country's caseload has exceeded 1,175,000. The Arab coalition says it has destroyed an explosive laden drone launched by Houthis towards southern Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the coalition said Yemeni rebels attempted to target Saudi city of Khamis Mushayit. The coalition said it is taking operational measures to foil attacks on civilian areas in the kingdom. Earlier, Saudi Arabia's envoy to UN, Abdul Mulawi, joked that Riyadh will take all necessary measures for the defense. He called on the UN Security Council to condemn these attacks and put an end to threats to the international peace and security. Amnesty International has warned that South Sudan is witnessing a new wave of repression. Amnesty's officials said South Sudanese authorities are targeting the rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. The officials said Juba arrested civil society activist and a politician and closed down radio station and academic think tank. The clampdown followed a declaration last month by the People's Coalition for Civil Action calling for a peaceful public uprising. The coalition had urged the public to join protests in Juba, but the capital fell silent as authorities branded the demonstrations illegal. They said any event calling for leadership change will not be peaceful. In China, 15 people have died after a heavy hauler collided with a truck in Heilongjiang province, Kaila City. The local authorities said at least one person was also injured in the accident. According to the local media, the Ministry of Public Security has initiated an investigation into the accident. It said efforts to deal with the aftermath of the incident are ongoing. In the United States, at least 58 people have died as the remnants of the storm Ida ravaged the country's northeastern states. Officials have drawn up a list of the missing and are conducting door-to-door searches of possible victims. The harsh floods ended up submerging cars, swamping subways and basements, while trapping scores of people in the 5 states. In New York, a record rain of 3 inches in just an hour overwhelmed the urban drainage systems that were never meant to handle such pressure. Ida, the 5th most powerful storm to hit the U.S., has also caused tens of billions of dollars in damage. The disaster has depicted the world's most developed country's vulnerability to the extreme weather outcomes of climate change. An 11-year-old Parisian boy has found his own way of helping to protect the environment by fishing metal objects from the Seine River. More in this report.
Everything started when Rafael first saw YouTube videos of people fishing objects out of rivers with magnets in 2019. Soon after, he got his first magnet for Christmas inside as a way to do something for the planet.
J'ai l'impression d'agir pour la planète.
I feel like I'm doing something for the planet, even if it is not much on my own small level, but at least I'm doing something. Some who are 10 or 11 years old stay at home and play soccer. Well, at 11 years old, I know I'm cleaning up. Not the entire planet, but I'm still cleaning up.
In a year and a half, Rafael has finished about 300 bikes, 200 scooters and 100 shipping trolleys out of the Seine and Paris canals. He has also fished several odd items, including handguns, a German rifle, an artillery shell and a jewel adorned with a precious stone. Rafael wants to raise awareness about the climate change and hopes it encourages others to also step up their efforts to save the planet.
Le but, c'est de sensibiliser.
My goal is to raise awareness so that a maximum of people do something. They don't have to do what I do, but at least do something. Even if it's not necessarily cleaning up canals, it could just be picking up a cigarette butt.
In October 2020, he was awarded the Medal of Paris, a distinction for people who accomplished a remarkable deed concerning the city. An exhibition with some of Rafael's treasures and items most commonly found in the Seine will open later this month in Paris.
Let's have a look at the weather situation around the world now. That's all from the news studios. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.